It started as a routine night until it turned into something far more disturbing. A group of white police officers, laughing among themselves, let their canine loose on a black man in the dark, treating it like a twisted game. They had no idea who he was, just another target to harass for their own amusement. But as the man hit the ground, shielding himself from the snarling dog, something shifted. The radio crackled. A name was spoken. The officers froze. Their faces drained of color as they finally recognized the man they had just attacked. He wasn't a suspect. He wasn't some random guy on the street. He was their superior, their boss. In that moment, everything changed. The power they thought they had over him was gone. Now they were the ones in trouble. But would justice be served, or would the system protect its own? The officers stood frozen, their laughter gone, replaced by wide eyes and racing hearts. The man they had just humiliated and brutalized was none other than their commanding officer, a man they had worked under for years, but in the darkness had failed to recognize. The dog, still growling, was yanked back as one officer fumbled with the leash, his hands shaking. The others exchanged nervous glances, their minds scrambling for an explanation, an excuse, anything to undo what they had just done. The man slowly rose to his feet, brushing dirt from his uniform, his face unreadable. He didn't yell. He didn't demand answers. He just stared at them, his silence louder than any words. The weight of their actions hung heavy in the air. They knew they had crossed a line, but what would happen next? Would he report them? Or would the system find a way to protect them again? The silence stretched between them, heavy and unbreakable. The officers stood stiff, their faces pale under the dim streetlights. No one spoke first. No one knew what to say. The man, their boss, dusted off his uniform, his breath controlled but deep, like someone holding back a storm. His eye scanned each of their faces, memorizing them. They had laughed while unleashing a dog on him, laughed, and now they could barely meet his gaze. One officer, the youngest of the group, shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't been the one to release the dog, but he hadn't stopped it either. He had stood there, chuckling along, thinking it was just another night. But now his hands felt clammy, his stomach twisted in knots. He thought about his family, his career, what would happen if this got out. Another officer, the one who had given the command, cleared his throat, his voice unsure. "Sir, this was a mistake. We didn't know it was you." The words were weak, empty. As if the real problem wasn't what they did, but who they did it to. The man let out a slow breath, his expression unreadable. Did it matter that they hadn't known? If it had been someone else, just another black man walking home, would anyone have cared? Would anyone have believed them if they had spoken up? His mind raced, flashing back to stories just like this, stories where no one listened, where the truth got buried under official reports and rewritten narratives. The radio on one of their belts crackled again. A dispatcher's voice cut through the thick air, calling for an update. No one moved. No one dared answer. In the distance, a car idled at the curb. A woman watched through her windshield, gripping her phone. She had seen everything. She had been recording. And she wasn't the only one. A few neighbors peeked through their windows, drawn by the shouting, by the sudden stillness that followed. The night wasn't as empty as the officers had thought. The man glanced toward the woman in the car. Their eyes met for a brief second before she drove off. Was she going to post the video? Would the world see what had happened? One of the officers wiped his face, his nerves fraying. "Sir, look, let's talk about this." "No need to." The man held up a hand, stopping him. "No need to what?" His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was crushing. No need to ruin their careers. No need to expose them. No need to hold them accountable. The officers weren't used to this. They weren't used to being the ones caught. And now, every second that passed felt like a countdown to something bigger, something they couldn't control. The question wasn't just what their boss would do. The real question was, who else already knew? And how far would the system go to bury the truth? The tension was unbearable now, stretching so tight it felt like the air itself could snap. The officers stood frozen, waiting, watching their boss for any sign of what he was going to do next. Would he report them, call for backup, end their careers right here in the middle of this dark, empty street? Their breaths were uneven, their hands twitching at their sides, but none of them dared reach for their radios. The man took a step forward, slow and deliberate. The officers instinctively flinched. Funny how quickly the roles had reversed. A few minutes ago, they had all the power. Now they were just as afraid as he had been, maybe even more. Because this wasn't just about what they had done. It was about what they stood to lose. The street was eerily quiet except for the distant hum of a car engine. The woman who had been recording, was she uploading the video now? Was it already spreading? The thought made one of the officers, the one who had given the command, swallow hard. His career, his reputation, his entire future. He could feel it slipping through his fingers. "Sir, please," he tried again, but his voice cracked. The man didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He had been in this uniform longer than most of them. He knew how things worked, how stories got rewritten, how people like him got dismissed, ignored, or worse. He had seen officers close ranks, protect their own, bury the truth under layers of bureaucracy and silence. But this time, they had picked the wrong man. He could feel the weight of history pressing against him. Every case where no one had listened, every excuse that had been made for moments just like this. He had spent years trying to change things from the inside, trying to prove that the badge could stand for something more. It was out. The video was already in circulation. The department knew. The media would know soon. The lie they had just started to craft was already collapsing before it could even take hold. The man turned to look at them, their expression shifting from nervous confidence to sheer panic. The system had protected them before. Maybe they had even counted on it. But now there was proof. The sergeant pressed his lips together, his jaw tightening. "We need to get ahead of this." His words were clipped, professional. He wasn't talking about justice. He was talking about damage control. One of the officers, the youngest, swallowed hard. He had spent the last few minutes watching everything unfold, unsure of where he stood. But now, reality was closing in fast. He glanced between his boss and the men he had worked beside, a war raging inside him. Then out of nowhere he spoke. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the night like a knife. "They knew," he said. They knew what they were doing. The group turned sharply toward him. Shock, betrayal, fear. The officers who had once stood so sure of themselves now looked like men standing at the edge of a cliff. And just like that, everything shifted again. Because now, it wasn't just about a video. It wasn't just about proof. It was about whether the truth, spoken out loud, would finally be enough to bring the whole thing crashing down. The words hung in the air, heavier than the night itself. Asterisk, asterisk, they knew asterisk, asterisk. The young officer's voice still echoed in his own ears. But now that it was out, he couldn't take it back. The others turned on him instantly. Their expressions twisted: anger, panic, disbelief. One of them shook his head, a silent warning, but it was too late. The sergeant exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple like he was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Damage control wouldn't be easy now. The video was already out, and now one of their own had spoken against them. The man, asterisk asterisk, their boss asterisk asterisk, watched it all unfold. He had spent years in this system, seen how these moments played out. The system had a way of protecting itself. But this time, something felt different. The panic in their eyes wasn't just about getting caught. It was about losing control of the story. A new voice crackled through the radio. Asterisk asterisk chief wants them off the streets. Now asterisk asterisk. Silence.